Again, when you talked earlier in the day about why do you sign Dak to this contract? Well, because he has the ability at the line of scrimmage to be the true field general that every team is looking for.
Welcome in to the NFL on Fox podcast. I'm your host, Dave Helman. And in the words of the GOAT, let's freaking go. We have got so much to get to. Week one, mostly in the books. We still do have one Monday night game to go, but 15 games have been played. A dizzying number of storylines, results, surprises, less than surprises. A full Sunday slate. We are back in the swing of things. If you're new to the show, this is the drill. It's Monday, and we are going to take you through the essence of what you need to know coming out of NFL Sunday. We call it our Sunday Six, the 6 big things that we think you need to know about moving in to your week. So many games to get to. Maybe you heard it was Tom Brady's debut in the booth right here on Fox. That honestly feels like a perfect place to start. The Dallas Cowboys, a big day for a lot of reasons in Cleveland. Dak Prescott signs a record-breaking $240 million extension the morning of this game. It took all offseason, but literally hours before the Cowboys start their season, he signs. The Cowboys go up to Cleveland and smack the Cleveland Browns 33-17. Just a domination for Tom Brady's first call up in the booth watching Cowboys Browns. And I'll let Tom take it away because Dak might have signed the deal, but another Cowboys player, maybe you've heard of him, Micah Parsons, playing like a guy that is going to want to be paid quite a bit of money in the very near future. Huge debut for Micah Parsons. I'll let Tom Brady take it away.
Micah, what a game by you, the entire defensive line, but I get an opportunity to give one award to a player a week, and you get the LFG player of the game. What a game you played. It's fun being up here and not having you chase me around. So to see you from this perspective, man, you played a great game today. You impacted the game in rushing. You get so many double teams out there, but you still find a way to make an impact. Way to go.
Hey, I appreciate that, TB, man. I take everything you told me over this offseason, man, just try and use it and enforce it in this game. And I appreciate this word, bro. It means a lot from you.
Yeah, well, it means a lot to watch you continue to evolve. And you're an amazing player. You're a great leader for that team. I know we all expect to see so many great things from you. So way to go. It's a great start for you. Isn't it a great feeling when you're on the road and you look up at the stadium and it's just Cowboy fans here at the end?
Hey, there's nothing like a Cowboy takeover. When you start hitting that Cowboy, I mean, you ain't heard too much in your career, but it's a great feeling when it's the Cowboy takeover and you're on this side.
It is. Well, congratulations. I'll let you get in there with your teammates, but great game. We'll see you next week. You got a big one against the Saints, but it's a great start to the season. Congratulations. Looking good, my man. Love you. Have a great time. Have a safe trip home.
All right, TB. Thank you, man.
Parsons was a lot of people's preseason favorite to win NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and this is a performance that puts him right on track. 3 tackles, 5 quarterback hits, 1 sack. Maybe not the most eye-popping numbers, but keep in mind, 9 pressures. That's the story of this game. The Cowboys do score 33 points. They get a special teams touchdown from Kevontae Turpin. Micah Parsons led the league in week 1, 9 pressures on the day. They had 6 sacks of Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, hurried him into 2 different interceptions. Yeah, Tom Brady was talking about Micah Parsons quite a bit, as you'll hear.
This guy deals with more double teams than anyone, gets the chip. Jones got him, but he's just too athletic to get underneath Teller to the middle of the pocket. This is what you deal with when you're a great rusher, and the only way to overcome that is with relentless pursuit, high motor, and just to never give up.
Parsons was undoubtedly the story of this game, but I'll give a little bit of love to Dak Prescott. The morning he signs a major extension, this won't go down as the gaudiest day of his career. 179 passing yards and a touchdown, 19 of 32. But remember the defense he's playing. This was a Browns defense that was the best in the league last year, brought tremendous amounts of pressure. Prescott breaking in rookie starters at left tackle and center against the likes of Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. It was a challenge, and I thought Prescott navigated it incredibly well, throwing with anticipation, dissecting what the Browns were trying to throw at him on defense, beat them on a blitz for a long touchdown to Brandon Cooks to open this thing up. Felt like Cowboys spent a lot of the second half of this game just playing keep away once the lead got out of control. But early on, I thought you saw the experience, the expertise that Dak Prescott brings to the position. And if you don't believe me, just listen to Tom Brady.
Well, what I love seeing about Dak today is that veteran quarterback, that veteran experience, going on the road. Nothing's too big for him. That touchdown pass he throws to Cooks early in the game, gets up to the line of scrimmage, recognizes the blitz, actually changes the protection. I think they didn't actually protect the way that he was hoping. He felt the pressure, drifted away, and threw a great route, a little corner route to Brandon Cooks there for an easy touchdown. So, again, when you talked earlier in the day about why do you sign Dak to this contract? Well, because he has the ability at the line of scrimmage to be the true field general that every team is looking for. He's got great poise and composure in the pocket. And plays like that always exemplify, are you really a master of the system out there? Do you really have a great understanding of what they're doing on offense, what your guys are capable of doing on offense? And then how do we execute that with crowd noise, going on the road, first game of the year? And he did so many things well today. That was just one example of many of that he was in total control today.
I love Tom pointing out Dak beating that blitz with the throw to Brandon Cooks. Early moment in this game, put the Cowboys up 7-3. I do think it exemplifies what he brings to an offense. Shout out to my guy, Doug Farrer of Athlon Sports for this one. But last season, Dak Prescott led the NFL in completions, passing yards, and air yards against man coverage. What do the Cleveland Browns do? They like to play man coverage. They put their DBs on an island, let the pass rush and the blitz get after it, and trust them to either get home or the DBs to play things correctly. They tried it against Dak, and it resulted in 6 points, a call you can hear right now.
He said he's got to go earn it. It's an all-out blitz. They're bringing all 6, and they can only block 5 of them. Dak knows it and lays it up there to Brandon Cooks. He knows the defender has no help to the pylon. Great throw and catch.
Next level expertise from the guy who did it at a higher level than anybody in NFL history. Maybe not the most scintillating game for Tom Brady's debut. Obviously, the Cowboys get away from the Browns in the second half of this game, but a phenomenal debut for Tom, for Kevin Burkhardt in the booth with him. Thought they brought a lot of energy. And again, who's giving you better expertise than a guy with 7 championships, 20 years of starting experience in the NFL, helping you break down defensive coverages, calls. You know, you can even see in the second half of this game, Tom Brady trying to help Deshaun Watson figure out where to go with the football as the Browns quarterback was trying to lead a comeback. Didn't quite work out for Deshaun. Maybe he can go back and listen to the broadcast for some pointers. Maybe, find the tight end over the middle of the field. Look to your outlet passes instead of breaking out of the pocket so much. Thought for a game that was over pretty early in the third quarter, a very entertaining listen. Really fun week 1 for Tom, KB, and the rest of the crew. They're sticking with Dallas. They'll be calling the Cowboys week 2 home game against the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints getting a huge 47-10 win against Carolina. Maybe that game all of a sudden looking even more enticing than it already was. Can't wait to see Tom Brady on the call in week 2 and where things go from here. But phenomenal debut for him. And yeah, safe to say a very fun first weekend for the Dallas Cowboys as well. Moving on to the next item in our Sunday 6th, one of the best games of week 1. This is Victory Unlocked, and it's brought to you by Zillow. Agents, tours, loans, homes. Let's talk about these Detroit Lions. And I'll tell you, if you want to talk about unlocking a victory, go watch the end of the Lions week 1 win against these LA Rams. They kick a field goal to tie this game at 20-20 as time expires. Overtime. Matthew Stafford's in the house. He's been throwing the ball all over the field in the second half. Rams have had the better of the Lions for the better part of 25 minutes. The Lions get the ball in the extra period and just commence to marching. If we're going to unlock a victory, Dan Campbell Ben Johnson and the Lions coaching staff looked at themselves and said, do we have the best offensive line in football? Let's go prove it. The Lions go 7 plays, 70 yards, and a game-winning touchdown. I admire them so much for going for the touchdown. We're not kicking field goals here in overtime, which allows Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp to get the ball back and put up some more video game numbers. No, we're going for the touchdown, and we're going to run, which the Lions did. 6 of 7 plays on this final possession were runs. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, 60 yards on the ground. They just bulldoze the Los Angeles Rams. Remember, maybe you heard Aaron Donald recently retired. He's not there to anchor the middle of that defensive line. Lots of young players, and the Lions just took it to them. Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, Taylor Decker. Let's just get out there and maul these guys. It was such an impressive way to cap off such an entertaining game. Lions built a 17-3 lead in this game, thanks in no small part to my guy, Jameson Williams. If he really is going to have a breakout season, this is the way to start it. He catches 5 balls for 121 yards and a touchdown. Certainly seemed to me that the Rams were focused on limiting the impact that Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta could make. So Jameson Williams steps up, arguably his best game as a pro, certainly his best game in the regular season as a pro. But the Rams aren't done. They're shuffling their offensive line, injuries up front, making life miserable on Matthew Stafford until he just starts doing Matthew Stafford things. I don't know if there are many things more entertaining in the NFL than when Matthew Stafford goes into heat check mode. He finished with 317 yards, only 1 touchdown, but there in the beginning of the fourth quarter, the throws he was making, most of them to Cooper Kupp, to keep Rams drives alive, to move them down into the red zone, to get points. This team looked dead in the water early in the third quarter. They come all the way back to have a late fourth quarter lead. Credit to the Giants. Jared Goff recovers from a late interception to get this game tied. And like I said, it felt like once the game gets to overtime, a switch flipped. And the Lions were like, we're just going to go take this thing. We're going to run it down their throats. We are not going to play any more defense. We're going to walk this thing off. And that's exactly what they did. I thought, first of all, it reflects the talent on this roster, offensive line, running backs, but also the ethos of this whole Dan Campbell thing. This is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be bold, deliver in crunch time, take risks. I thought it was great. I thought it was everything that the Lions want their team to be. It's not always going to be pretty. Again, it looked for a minute like they might have given this game away, but to rebound the way they did, they looked like one of the best teams in the NFL toward the home stretch, despite the ups and downs, and they'll find ways to get more balanced on offense. I don't think you're going to see a lot of games where Amon-Ra or St. Brown finishes with 13 yards, but they made the necessary adjustments. They did what they had to do, and they are 1-0 over their old quarterback. Don't think that doesn't matter in Detroit. Just an all-around inspiring performance, especially in crunch time, in overtime. So much fun to watch a great running game do its thing. Up next on the Sunday Six, how about an icebreaker? Like first week of school, you got to reassociate who everybody is, put names to faces. 3 rookie quarterbacks made their debuts in week 1, and a handful of veterans started for new teams. So let's just remind ourselves where everybody is and how they all did, and where else could you start but in the Windy City, one of the most anticipated games of the weekend, the most anticipated season of Bears football in modern memory. And wouldn't you know it, Caleb Williams makes his debut, but the Chicago Bears looked very much like the team we've gotten used to seeing over the last couple of, decades. I'll let Amin and my buddy Mark Sanchez explain.
Amin Mark Sanchez wrapping things up from Chicago, where there was a ton of anticipation over the course of the last 4 months. The number 1 overall pick, what some consider to be a generational talent, Caleb Williams steps into the offensive captain role. And of course, as we've seen so often in the city of Chicago, it's the defense the special teams that helps carry the day for a young quarterback. So not the debut I'm sure that Caleb Williams would have wanted. Let's start there with Williams and what you saw.
Oh, sure. I think they were out of sorts early. They were terrible on first down for a better part of the game, and it got their drives off to bad starts. They were in 3rd and long quite a bit, 2nd and long quite a bit, and they couldn't quite get going. Thankfully for Caleb and this Bears offense, as you mentioned, the defense showed up, and it was, guys who have done it before, maybe in other places, like Taylor coming over from Seattle applying pressure, Billings inside, Sweat, and then the huge interception, the punt block, the pick 6 for Stevenson was a monster here, and this crowd got back into it. It brought him back to life, and then towards the end, Caleb managed it just fine. He played it smart, took some completions, ran the ball a couple times, kept the clock moving, put the pressure back on Tennessee, and somehow found a way to get out of this 17-point hole.
What we're not going to do is judge Caleb Williams too harshly for winning his first ever NFL game. Very few number 1 overall picks do that. But you do have to admit that for all the hype and anticipation and the talented weapons, it's a little funny that this was vintage Chicago Bears football. 148 total yards. And as Mark Sanchez alluded to, it was the Tyreek Stevenson pick 6 of a very bad Will Levis pass, and the Jonathan Owens block punt return for a touchdown. Simone Biles' husband, as you might have seen during the summer. That's what did it for the Chicago Bears. Like, this could easily have been a game from 2003, or as a matter of fact, much longer ago. Last time the Chicago Bears won a game without scoring an offensive touchdown and without managing 150 yards of offense happened in 1938. They beat the Green Bay Packers 2-0 with 77 yards of offense. So we've come so far. We have so much to look forward to, but I don't know. I think Bears football is still just very deeply ingrained in the DNA there in Chicago. Congratulations to Caleb Williams. Again, we're not taking meaningful conclusions from this game, but just, the more things change, I guess the more they stay the same. All right, I'm talking about Chicago quarterbacks. Caleb Williams got a long-awaited debut. The Bears' last quarterback, Justin Fields, got a surprise debut. Russell Wilson was named the starter, tweaked his calf late in the week. He tried to give it a go. He also, despite being ruled out, decided to wear his shoulder pads on the sideline when the Steelers went to Atlanta. But no, it's Justin Fields who gets a win in his Pittsburgh Steelers debut. I would call it the definition of fine. Justin Fields, 156 yards, 57 yards on the ground, passer rating of 92, did just enough to help the Steelers get a hard-fought 18-10 win. We're going to talk much more about the Steelers, but I want to shout out Justin Fields, 4-14 on the road as the Chicago Bears starting quarterback, 1-0 in Pittsburgh. But more on the Steelers in a minute. Let's take it up to MetLife Stadium, where I would like to think Sam Darnold exercised some demons. Obviously, his stint as the New York Jets starting quarterback didn't go so hot. Several years later, he is back as a Minnesota Viking, and he looked pretty good. A lot of people talking after the J.J. McCarthy injury. If Sam Darnold can just look pretty good, this is a nice Minnesota roster. 19 of 24, 208 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Even the interception, he was hit on the throw by Dexter Lawrence. I'm not going to hold that against him. I'll go ahead and say I'm not sure how much a week 1 win over this New York Giants team matters, but it's as nice a start as possible. What I appreciated when Sam Darnold caught up with our Megan O'Leary, he doesn't seem overly satisfied by it either.
Sam, you just said to me, I'm doing pretty good. You sure are. You spread the ball around with efficiency, a great game for you. But on both sides of the ball, this Viking squad really came together. What can you say about the performance and the tone this just set for the season?
Yeah, I mean, our defense, our special teams, man, they flew around today. That win was all about them today. And, as an offense, I feel like we executed when we had to. But, we have a lot to clean up. We're never satisfied, but it was definitely good to get that first win.
You had over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. You told us earlier this week you didn't really have any memories here at MetLife. How will you look back upon this one?
Yeah, it was a good win. You know, I think it's the first win. But again, like I said, we just got to keep our head down and keep working, which we will, obviously, because we got a lot to clean up.
I have no doubt you will. Sam, thank you. Congratulations. Thanks.
Sam Darnold went back to where his old team plays. Jacoby Brissett's just back with his old team. Our next new quarterback, not really new. Jacoby Brissett, drafted by the New England Patriots almost a decade ago, and now he's back as a 1-0 quarterback after the upset of Week 1. The New England Patriots, 8.5-point underdogs on the road at Cincinnati. And Jacoby Brissett, you know, when he was named the starter of this very talent-deficient Patriots team, we all said, R.I.P. Jacoby Brissett. They don't want you. They don't want Drake May to get hurt. They're going to send you out there to play behind this bad offensive line. R.I.P. And Jacoby Brissett said, R.I.P. to your survivor pool, because I know that roughly a third of all football fans picked the Cincinnati Bengals to win their Week 1 matchup, and now you're wondering why you wasted your money 1 week into the season. Not an amazing performance by Jacoby Brissett by any stretch of the imagination. 121 passing yards, carried the rock 7 times for 32. But you know what? This is a New England team that was projected to win 4.5 games heading into the season. Well, they're at 1 after 1 week, and we want to make sure we shout Jacoby Brissett out for being part of that. Let's keep it pushing to not victorious performances, but 2 more rookies did start this week. At least check in on how Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels did in their debuts. We'll start with Bo Nix up in Seattle. Made a little bit of noise early. Can't say it was anything that you want to write home about. Bo Nix averaging just 3.3 yards per attempt. Does throw 2 interceptions. 42 passing yards on throws that went more than 10 yards down the field. I said in the preview episode, new head coach Mike McDonald was probably going to have something for the rookie. I would say that he did. The Broncos fall 26-20 up in Seattle. We'll see what Bo Nix can build on from this. I would say a much more encouraging for me debut down in Tampa Bay, which, to be clear, Jayden Daniels and his Washington Commanders did get rocked in Week 1. They lose 37-20 to a red-hot Tampa Bay team, by the way. We can talk about them later in the week. Baker Mayfield starting the season about as well as you possibly can. But Jayden Daniels, on a day where he wasn't really pushing the ball vertically downfield, didn't make any back-breaking mistakes as a passer rating of 93.1. 184 yards through the air. And then obviously the thing, he's a good quarterback, but the X factor with a guy like Jayden Daniels, that rushing ability, he goes 88 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns, one of those coming at the very end of this game. I talked to Moose Johnston and Kevin Kugler about it. A very encouraging debut, I thought.
I certainly take encouragement. If I'm a Washington fan, I know this is a work in progress, and you didn't expect Rome to be built in one day, Daryl, and it certainly isn't going to be with Washington. But I thought there are a lot of things you can build on if you're Washington with the rookie quarterback.
Yeah, I think the one concern, and it doesn't really have anything to do with Jayden, is who's the number 2? Who's going to be there? If Todd Bowles is going to take Terry McLaurin out of the game, who's going to be that player that's going to step up? Today, it was kind of Austin Eckler, kind of out of the backfield. He led the team in catches. He led the team in receiving yards. You can't have that with your running back. One of these other guys has to step up at the wide receiver position and be that number 2. So if you're going to convict yourself to taking Terry McLaurin out of the game, I'm going to make you pay for it. And they don't have that guy right now. And that's kind of the hard part. When you're a guy like Jayden Daniels coming into this situation, you're going to struggle with the supporting cast. It's very rare that a quarterback drafted number 2 overall is going to have a really good supporting cast around him. I won't say impressed, but the offensive line was promising. So that was another area. But he shows you the playmaking ability if he has to use his legs.
We'll continue to get more and more familiar with all of these new and young quarterbacks. Not all ups in Week 1. I think it was never fair to expect that, but some very encouraging performances. Excited to see where it goes from here with all of these new signal callers in these new places. We just talked about quarterback debuts, getting big wins in Week 1. And look, I get it. It's the most valuable position in the sport. They drive the narratives. They get the headlines. I get it. But as we keep it pushing in Week 1, let's point out that wins are not always a quarterback stat, and football is the ultimate team game. And if we needed a reminder, who better to give it to us than Mike Tomlin's Pittsburgh Steelers? They go to Atlanta. They make a statement, an 18-10 win over the Atlanta Falcons. I'm calling it Mr. Tomlin's opus. I don't know how well 90s movie references are going to play in 2024, but when you think about this smash mouth defense heavy formula that the Mike Tomlin Steelers have been following seemingly forever, he might have rewritten the book of what's possible. Yes, Justin Fields played a nice game, getting the call at the last minute that Russell Wilson wasn't going to be able to go, didn't make any mistakes. He was solid. But the story of this game is much, much different than the quarterback. The Steelers go on the road, 270 yards of offense. They don't score a touchdown. And they get this 18-10 win against Kirk Cousins, ruin his Falcons debut, sacked him twice, intercepted him twice. We do need to shout out Chris Boswell, Steelers kicker, going 6 of 6 on the day. All of the Steelers points coming off of Boswell's leg, 3 of those from 50-plus yards. But in very, very classic Steelers fashion, it is the defense that leads the way. And to the surprise of none, one very particular defender, that would be number 90 in Pittsburgh, TJ Watt, dominated this game. 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a walk-off sack, throw in 4 more quarterback hits and a fumble recovery. Where else do you start? And that's what I asked Greg Olsen and Joe Davis, what they saw from TJ Watt in this dominant performance.
Watt was everywhere. I mean, I know it's like that all the time, but it seemed like anytime they needed to play there, he was.
Yeah, and it was Watt, it was Highsmith, it was really the entire defensive front. We came into the game, we said, it is not indicative of any offense, let alone Atlanta or anybody around the league. If you're in must drop back, either playing from behind or by the down and distance required, that is not the best way to attack them. It's just a hard matchup on the edge for both of your tackles all game long. And in the second half, the Falcons offense was just worn down up front, and it really started with Watt and Highsmith, Cam Hayward, the entire group up front, and a very fitting ending that the final play as time expired was finally TJ Watt, after having 2 sacks taken off the board due to penalties. He finally got one with 2 seconds left in the game.
I was so happy to hear Greg Olsen shout that out, that TJ Watt could have had a better game. He had 2 strip sacks negated by penalties, at least one of which I'm going to go ahead and call dubious. The refs ruled TJ offside. I happen to think he just timed his get off as well as you possibly can. Turns a strip sack into no play, and 1 snap later, the Falcons get their only touchdown. So you could argue at the tail end of the first half, the only reason the Falcons even found the end zone is again, I'll call it a dubious flag on TJ Watt. The guy was absolutely dominant. How fitting, like Greg said, that he does make up for it a little bit with the walk-off sack to prevent any kind of Falcons comeback. The Falcons had 51 yards of offense in the second half of this game. Absolutely incredible. I know it's week 1. I know the weather's not even turning cool yet, but this was the type of game that puts TJ Watt on. I mean, he was already on the Defensive Player of the Year radar, but I would go as far as to say this can put him firmly at the front of the conversation. I know there's a lot more of these games to go, but when you have a defender that can take over a game the way we saw from TJ Watt, that's the type of conversations you have to have. Of course, it's all very superfluous. It's all very flowery. I do have to shout out Mike T in the post game. Simply said, I expect them to step up, and they did. I can't say enough about 90 and company, 90 being TJ Watt. Yeah, hell of a game from him and the Steelers defense to open the season up 1-0. This is the part of the program where I tell you that the Pittsburgh Steelers are now the only 1-0 team in the AFC North. I don't know how many of us had that on our bingo cards for the toughest division in football. But let's continue the Sunday 6 with a banner day for the other tough division in the AFC. I'm talking about the AFC East, which is currently the only completely undefeated division in football. Yes, I know the New York Jets haven't played yet, but just let me have this. 3-0. All 3 other teams in the AFC East go 3-0. The only division to do that. the only division that doesn't at least have one loss in its standings. We already talked about the New England Patriots. Shocking upset. Jacoby Brissett and the gang go into Cincinnati and get the win. Shout out Gerard Mayo, new Patriots coach, becomes the first New England head coach to win his debut since 1991. Truly a new era up in New England. Let's talk about the other two juggernauts in the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills did Bills things. It's always stressful, and they always rally and come back. They rally from a 17-3 deficit to beat the Arizona Cardinals 34-28. We said it would be one of the most high-scoring games of week one, and we were absolutely right. Josh Allen rushed for 2 touchdowns, throws for another 2 touchdowns. How's this for a stat? This was Josh Allen's 4th game with 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns. He joins Steve Young, 49ers legend Steve Young, as the only quarterbacks in NFL history to do that in 4 different games. To be completely honest with you, I would have guessed Josh Allen has done this so many more times. Just kind of feels like he calls his own number like this on a regular basis, but still, even just doing it 4 times, if you've done it alone with a Hall of Famer like Steve Young, it speaks very highly to your ability, I would say. It even comes with a patented Josh Allen turnover. Nobody in the league has more than him over the time he's been in the NFL. But if your quarterback can rush for 2 and throw for 2 and leap into the end zone, just barreling people over, I say you take the bad with the good. Very impressive second half for the Bills. Like I said, it was 17-3 at one point. Never seemed to phase them. You got contributions from James Cook, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir. I'm intrigued to see how that evolves and changes. Not a big day for a young guy like Dalton Kincaid, but how often are the Bills going to vary up the looks? Like, are those 3, Cook, Coleman, and Shakir, are they going to be Josh Allen's go-to guys all year? Or is it going to kind of change and be dictated by the matchups? I lean toward the latter, but we'll see. Cardinals got off to a very fast start. Kyler Murray looked nice in week 1, right up until right tackle Jonah Williams got hurt. Hopefully not too serious for Jonah Williams, because that Cardinals offense bogged down in a bad way in the second half once Jonah Williams left the game. Bills rallied. Speaking of rallies, what a day in Miami for a few reasons. For starters, your NFL Sunday began with photos hitting the internet of Tyreek Hill in handcuffs. Wound up being a minor traffic violation. Nobody really knows what's going on, but I woke up Sunday morning to video of Tyreek Hill sitting outside of his sports car in handcuffs. It just that type of day, I guess. And we'll get back to this, and I think it's important what Tyreek said. We'll get back to how all of that played out, but obviously Tyreek Hill plays the game. The Dolphins get off to a sluggish start. Miami trailed Jacksonville 17-7 with less than 2 minutes to play in the third quarter. It looked beyond hopeless. Travis Etienne is barreling toward the end zone for a touchdown that's going to make it 24-7. Putrid Dolphins performance until it's not, because Javon Holland strips Etienne at the goal line. It's recovered in the end zone for a touchback. Literally a play later, Tyreek Hill, who started his day in a misunderstanding with the Miami police, catches a deep crosser, turns on the Jets, and it's an 80-yard touchdown from 24-7 to 17-14 in, I don't know, 90 seconds. That's the type of speed the Miami Dolphins bring to the field, the big playability. And of course, as only Tyreek Hill could, he celebrates by putting his hands behind his back as if he's being handcuffed. You can't write this stuff. This is why we call it the best reality TV in the world. I'm ready for anything when it comes to Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins until I'm apparently not. Miami outscores the Jags 13-0 after halftime. Felt like the Jags just never got over that gut punch of Travis Etienne fumbling away basically the game-winning touchdown. Phenomenal performance. Tyreek Hill, 730 yards and a touchdown. to take it back to what we were talking about, going to the post game, and I did, very, very interesting conversation with Tyreek Hill where he essentially asks, what if I wasn't Tyreek Hill? Like if I wind up in handcuffs over a minor traffic violation, what happens to me if I'm not the best wide receiver in football? Miami defensive end Calais Campbell also wound up in handcuffs because he tried to de-escalate the situation. It's a valid question from Tyreek. A hard one to answer in one soundbite. I do know this, though. Of all the players in the NFL, I think literally only Tyreek Hill could begin his day in handcuffs and 5 hours later have 130 yards and a touchdown in a huge week 1 win with a handcuff celebration thrown in. One of one stuff, a one of one comeback from the Miami Dolphins. No pressure, Jets, but it's a lot to live up to. Big day in the AFC East. One last thing we want you to know before we get you out of here, before we wrap up the show. Just look, there's a lot going on in a given week. Some things are going to slip under the radar. Just in case you missed it, it's not just that it was an entertaining game, but can you draw up a game that delivers on so many expectations in so many ways better than what we saw in the early window? Houston Texans go up to Indianapolis and they get a 29-27 win against their division rival, the Colts. Like I said, it's not just that they won. It's not just that the game was entertaining, but it lived up to so many things that we wanted it to be. Because you know how week 1 can go. There's going to be flags. Teams are going to be figuring things out. You don't play all that much during the preseason these days. Week 1 can be a little bit herky-jerky. Not the case here, as it comes down to the wire, just like it did at the end of last season. Remember, Colts and Texans fought for the division title in the season finale last year, and they pick right back up where they left off, except Anthony Richardson is back in the mix and looking like one of the most exciting players in football. He goes for 268 all-purpose yards, 3 total touchdowns on the day, runs for 56, and then what stat line do you want to hear first? Like, do you want to hear that Anthony Richardson became the youngest player in NFL history to have multiple 50-yard touchdown passes? Do you want to hear that Anthony Richardson's 65 air yards on his long bomb to Alec Pierce is the furthest touchdown throw in the league over more than 2 years? How about the fact that he only needed 9 completions to get to 212 passing yards? The guy delivered on all of the hype and potential that we associate with him. It was just incredibly fun to watch. And now I hear you, Texans fans. The Colts caught the L. I get it, because the Houston Texans picked up exactly where they left off. CJ Stroud doing his thing, nearly flawless quarterback rating of 116, 234 passing yards on the day, just never seems to make the critical mistake. Even his interception was called back by a defensive flag, so you can't even put that on him. Continues to check every box except one big development. We knew the receivers were good, and they all played well, by the way. Stephon Diggs, 2 touchdowns in his Texans debut. Nico Collins picking up where he left off. But how about the Texans finding a little bit of a running game? Joe Mixon explodes for 159 yards and a tutty in his Texans debut. Houston goes for 213 yards on the ground, which, with 1 game left to play, is the best mark in the entire NFL for week 1. So if you think back, that was an Achilles heel for this Texans team. Yeah, CJ Stroud's great. Yeah, they can wing the ball around the yard. They can't run it. Well, that might not be the case in 2024. Joe Mixon and that rushing attack looking very impressive. And the game's just fun, by the way. Anthony Richardson leads the Colts downfield to cut it to 2 with just a few minutes to play. Looks like they might have a chance at a comeback upset win. And then please go look this up if you haven't. I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. 3rd and 11, game on the line. CJ Stroud finds Nico Collins for exactly 12 yards at the marker, at the sideline. Amazing throw, better catch, and they ice this thing. If they don't get that, there's no telling. Who knows what happens, but just an incredibly nails play. There might not be a game that delivered on the hype better than this one. It's a shame that it was happening at the same time as so many other things. So don't let it go under your radar. Anthony Richardson, very fun. Houston Texans, very good. The AFC South might be a lot better than some of us give it credit for. All right, that does it for our show. Our first Sunday episode in the books for 2024, but never fear, there's so much more left to come. We will be back tomorrow. We'll have all of the news and notes, injury updates, storylines to watch as we ease into week 2. And maybe you heard there's one more game. Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets taking on San Francisco on Monday Night Football. A banger of a Monday night game to finish off week 1. We will have reaction to that. Like I said, we'll have news, notes, updates. Got everything coming your way. If you haven't, please make sure you subscribe. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on social at NFL on Fox Pod. We'll be back in your feed on Tuesday. So much more heading your way. Week 1, exactly as amazing as I wanted it to be, as fun as I remembered, and I can't wait to do it again. We will talk to y'all so soon. I appreciate it.